Thank you for joining with me. We are picking up in the Prelude, and this is the early scribing, style editing, and messages. When Helen dictated this to Bill, she dictated everything she had taken down with some exceptions, material that was highly personal. Then she and Bill edited out what clearly did not belong. Jesus was very clear to them that anything of a specific or personal nature did not belong in these notes, which was his term for what he was giving Helen. The published version has none of the material that was meant only for Helen and Bill. On Casey, Freud, etc. It was taken out because it did not belong there. Unfortunately, however, what still remains is some of the awkwardness in phrasing and style, as well as gaps in the writing that were left when the personal material was deleted. The early scribing, therefore, was not as if Jesus were standing next to Helen's ear, dictating through a microphone, but was more of a dialogue where Jesus would say something and Helen might respond with a question that Jesus would then answer. The discussion would occasionally go off on a tangent, and sometimes Jesus would gently and lovingly reprimand her for attempting to avoid the material. When those passages were removed again, a gap was left, which we had to fill in with minor words. Yet, despite our best efforts, I am afraid it still does not read very fluently. I mentioned earlier that the introduction as we now have it was not part of the original dictation. Recall that the course began with, "This is a course in miracles. Please take notes." Then came, "The first thing to know about miracles is that there is no order of difficulty among them." Within a few weeks, Helen was complaining to Jesus about the impossible nature of the material he was dictating to her, and said to him, "I assume this is an elective course," a clear reference to procedures in universities where there are required courses for all students and other students that may elect to take, and others that the students may elect to take, The cuteness of Helen's remark was matched by Jesus' response, that no, it is not an elective, but a required course. He then continued, "Only the time you take it is voluntary." That is the meaning of the sentences in the introduction. By stating that a course in miracles is required, Jesus did not mean to suggest that everyone in the world had to take it. Rather, his point was that for Helen and Bill, the course was required. The course was required because it was what they asked for, another way of relating. Clearly, you could not ask for a better answer to the request for a way of relating to others without judgment, criticism, or attack than the course itself. It naturally follows that what now appears in the introduction and the first 4 to 5 chapters was not necessarily dictated word for word. I might also mention that there were not 50 miracle principles originally. In fact, there were not 50 in a row, the way they now appear. In the dictation, there was a statement of a miracle principle and then discussion, which could sometimes go a little far afield, not from what was helpful, but certainly from the specific teaching. Some of the material that is now in Chapter 1 in the sections after the first 50 principles was originally part of the miracle principles discussion. When I saw the manuscript that Helen and Bill had edited, I recall there being 53 principles. Bill thought there should be 50, and so the 3 that were taken out were reabsorbed or restated in the material. I mention this so that people will not view the course as sacrosanct, which unfortunately many people already do. For example, every word is holy and sacred and cannot be touched. Helen did not feel that way. She was certainly clear about not changing any important words, but the that's and whiches and DC, the dems, the doses, as we used to say in Brooklyn, were obviously not important to the teaching, and she did make those kinds of changes, okay? Most of these changes took place only at the beginning of the material. In other words, Helen recognized the course's essential distinction between form and content. That the nonverbal content of love was important, not its expression in the form of words. What we currently have, Helen, Bill, and I felt was the way Jesus wanted it. The material that did not belong is not here. The problem, as I have been saying, is that these first 4 chapters frankly just do not read well. I mentioned in my introduction that the writing becomes very beautiful and that the last half of the text is filled with passage upon passage in wonderful blank verse. That is not the case in the first 4 chapters, however, and Helen was always ashamed of them. Well, she was a Columbia professor, so. In fact, in the very early days when anyone would want to see the course, and she would show it to very, very, very few people, and even then usually not show them the whole course, she would just share the really beautiful and rhapsodic passages. Her shame about this first part was so pronounced that when we were going through the editing process, I said to her, "You know, it would save us both a lot of time if you would ask Jesus to redictate the first 4 chapters." I was being somewhat facetious, but Helen did not think she could stand to go through that process again. The first 4 chapters remain and are as they are. Despite everything I have been saying, they still are remarkable in what they contain. Indeed, while the ideas do not nicely flow one from the other as in later chapters, and at times are even slightly obtuse in their expression, they are nonetheless incredible in terms of containing the entirety of the thought system of A Course in Miracles. There is still a treasure field here for us to mine. Our symphony is about to begin. The conductor raises his baton and signals the orchestra to join. The music of the miracle is heard, and reminiscent of Shakespeare's lovely words, we say softly to ourselves in preparation for the sweet harmonies we are to hear. Here will we sit and let the sounds of music creep in our ears, soft stillness and the night become the touches of sweet harmony. The Merchant of Venice. And that is the end of the prelude. And tomorrow we will begin chapter 1. I love you. Thank you so much for joining with me, and I will see you then.